Hi, so welcome to Chrysalis on the Couch, which is on our Chrysalis YouTube channel. If you haven't joined us before, then this is where a few of us from Chrysalis get together and just informally discuss topics that we find of interest. If you like what you're hearing today, then do please subscribe to our channel. And please hit the like button as well. We have quite a few of our episodes now for Chrysalis on the Couch, and we hope that you enjoy them all, and we hope in particular you enjoy this one. So my name is Lorna, and today I'm introducing Kirsty, Phil and Julia. So welcome everybody. And we are today just going to discuss a broad topic of personal therapy, and personal therapy in particular while training. And it's one of those topics that can be sort of quite divisive. On the other hand, we can have really, really good experiences of therapy and really good reasons why we might want it for ourselves or suggest it for others. So, okay, without further ado, so as I said, my name is Lorna, and we'll just take a moment to introduce ourselves to everyone.
Okay. I was going to say, shall I go first?
Yeah.
I'm Kirsty. I teach for Chrysalis. I teach level 4 and level 5, so year 2 and year 3. I've been doing that for some time now. Absolutely love it. Love the teaching, love the dynamics of the group that people bring to the classroom, and I also love the syllabus and the way that we actually produce it with Chrysalis. I love teaching it, and I think it's one of the best things out there. So that's me.
Thanks, Kirsty. Phil?
Hi, I'm Phil McLeod. I am a Chrysalis alumni. Learned both hypnotherapy and counselling with Chrysalis. Had a wonderful 3.5-year journey. And now working in private practice and starting to teach with Chrysalis beginning in January 2022. So looking forward to that learning journey, and really excited about that. So thank you.
Julia.
Okay, so I'm Julia. I work in the head office. I'm a project manager, so I'm responsible for developing the business as much as possible and spreading the word of what Chrysalis does to the masses. So it's good to meet you all, obviously, and looking forward to hearing all about this.
Thanks, Julia. So as I said, I'm Lorna Caldwell. I am also a tutor for Chrysalis. I teach years 2 and 3. I'm also a private practice therapist and have been so for a number of years. I've also had my own personal therapy and really enjoyed it. And I feel that that's probably a good place to start, really. Is for me to just think back and think that I had personal therapy quite a long time ago. I can remember having that first session and going home and needing to go straight to bed and sleep about 4 o'clock in the afternoon for the rest of the evening and for the rest of the night. So I don't know what that particular session triggered for me, but it certainly did something that was really powerful. And it's probably a reason why I was then really, really drawn to the idea of this as a profession.
It's funny, isn't it? Because when I had my personal therapy sort of years ago, back in 2003, I only went because my now ex-husband was going through psychotic episodes. So I wanted to go so that I could almost support him more to understand what was going on. And then probably a couple of sessions in, the therapist said to me, "So what about you? How are you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm okay. I'm not the one that's in hospital, yada, 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 yada." And she went, and he went, no. How are you doing? And it was the first time that somebody in all of that episode that had lasted quite a few months by that time already, that somebody had said to me, how are you doing? Because everything had been about him. Understandably, he was the one that was poorly, not me. And I was just totally floored by that very, very simple question. But that's why I love, you know, therapy, and I love what we do and all this lot, because in my private practice, sometimes I think that the simplest questions can have the most powerful impact. And I ended up doing about a year's worth of work with this gentleman who ended up then being kind of a mentor to me. And he was the one at the end of it that turned around and said, you could do what I do. You've got the skills that's needed. And I was like, of course I couldn't. That would involve, you know, going and qualifying, and I can't do that. I'm far too old. I'm this, that, and the other. And gradually, he just used to nudge me every few months, every 6 to 8 months. Any more thoughts? And I was always too busy with work. And but during the course of the therapy, and stuff that I've learned about subsequently, he was really good about making me reminding me that putting my needs first sometimes was not a bad thing. It has to be part of the bigger picture. Because I'd always thought, oh God, if I think about me, I'm being selfish. And he helped me realize that you know, you have to put yourself in the equation of your own life sometimes, because if you don't, who else is going to? And I think that's one of the biggest things that moving forward, that I've paid forward almost to people that have sat in front of me, saying it's not selfish to put yourself in your equation. And that is sometimes, you know, that can really evoke a response. So for me, having the therapy that I had really gave me a good understanding of sometimes the simplest things that we can ask of people can have the biggest response. And I did the Chrysalis route as well, so that was great. 3 years, and I was in a really stressful job, and the practice groups were great because I knew at least once a week I was going to get some lovely hypnotherapy, relaxation, and so I took full advantage of that. So when the opportunity came up to teach for Chrysalis, I was like, oh yeah, I'm absolutely going to do that. But for me, it gave me a good grounding, and I didn't even think I needed it. I thought, because I was a pretty together person, you know, I'm there, I'm the responsible one, I can cope. So even though I didn't think I needed it, once I'd had it, it was wow, just wow.
That's so interesting, because it's weird, isn't it? Day to day, you go through life and you're so focused on external factors, people pleasing, all of those sorts of things that go on day to day, that you almost don't ever think to ask yourself, what do I need? What do I want? How am I feeling? It's kind of, like you say selfish. It's exactly what the kind of feeling is, isn't it? It's like, but then actually personal development is part of life. It's actually what gives you purpose, meaning, you know, finding out who you are, being authentic. But that takes work, doesn't it? It's not something that's easy to do. And I think being able to ask yourself that question, but then having the tools to know how to do that, see the wood for the trees, and actually strip it all back and ask yourself, what do I want? What do I need? That's when someone else can help pull that out of you and facilitate that. Maybe. Yeah.
It's, well, self-care, isn't it, really? Self-care is very different to being selfish. And self-care, putting yourself, if everybody wrote a priority list, you know, would you yourself be on that priority list? And every now and again, would you be number one on that priority list? You know, and that type of thing, as you say, it could be therapeutic, you know, and go to see a counsellor or a hypnotherapist or somebody like that. Or, as you say, Julia, just something around developing yourself, or taking a bit of time or space for yourself and making it about you. And that is self-care, which is entirely different to somebody being quite selfish, really. So it's very, very interesting, I think, you know, in talking about those things, you know, personal therapy in a kind of in an odd way, I suppose, on reflection. When I think back to my training with Chrysalis and the learning, I learned a lot about hypnotherapy, counselling obviously, but also you learn a lot about yourself.
Yeah.
Which is, so that in itself is a big learning journey as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, you know, we could actually say that personal therapy, you know, fits into a category of general sort of self-awareness and self-development and so on. It's one way, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think that we put a lot of emphasis on self-development within the Chrysalis course generally in all kinds of different ways. So Kirsty, you mentioned that, you know, joining with your practice group each week and so on when you're training is really important. And just the bond that happens there, and you know, and the honesty and so on that happens in practice groups as well. So, you know, I mean, interestingly, when I trained, I didn't train with Chrysalis. I trained with another organisation, and my professional registration has personal therapy as mandatory as part of the course. So I had to undertake that. You know, that was really interesting for me because I know that actually, you know, courses have different ideas about this. Some courses mandate personal therapy as part of it, and some courses don't. And in Chrysalis, we don't. There's lots of reasons for that. Personally, I found it very useful, but that was because I was ready. You know, I was absolutely ready. And once I'd engaged with it, I found it amazing. And, you know, it actually stayed much longer than I needed to stay to just tick the box and get the hours, and actually stayed with my therapist for over 2 years and absolutely loved it, you know, really loved it. And, you know, it was a real release for me and I got loads from it. If I hadn't been ready, that would have been a really different story, I think. You know, it might have been very much, you know, a tick box exercise. Yeah. I might have actually found it more difficult than it was giving me benefit, you know, just in terms of, well, this is extra stress because it's expensive, let's face it, you know, it's expensive to, you know, it's not often that we commit to something on a regular basis that's going to be, you know, it's going to be a chunk of money. And we know that as therapists, whenever we're talking with our clients, as you know, we try to contain the work. You know, I might have just felt that, you know, my therapist was really trying to get me to go somewhere, you know, within myself that I just wasn't ready to go. And, you know, luckily I didn't have that experience and I was ready to go, but I would imagine, you know, possibly others find it harder.
Because that interests me, because there is a fear. I mean, friends have talked about it. There's a fear of opening up, but I suppose it's like a friendship, isn't it? There's certain friends that you feel that you can communicate to a further level and you feel safe with, etc. And in terms of a relationship with a therapist, I imagine it's how comfortable do I feel with this individual? Am I ready? Obviously, but because you want the reassurance that this feels right. It feels right inside to be able to be comfortable enough to then, because obviously stripping back, I kind of think, oh gosh, am I going to have to strip back everything? And maybe I don't want to, you know, unearth my whole life. Maybe I just want solutions so I can move forward. Maybe a quick fix in a way. And that's the wrong way to look at it. But that's kind of, it's scary, isn't it? It would be scary to a lot of people, I imagine. I don't know, but.
I think that's right, Julia. I think there's always an element of bravery and courage for somebody to come to counselling and come to therapy, whatever type it is. You know, it takes that element of courage to actually put your hand up and say, I need a little bit of help. So as therapists, we have to take that into account and show that empathy towards that person, you know, and thank them for coming. You know, I try and do almost a consultation appointment with my clients, just to ensure that they're comfortable with me, and if for whatever reason that they say no, well, that's fine, you know, absolutely fine, no problem at all. I think the key element there is feeling ready for it, you know, and feeling comfortable to go through, because it's a process, you know, and feeling ready to go through that process, and to particular degrees, whether it's dealing with one thing or whether it's dealing with a whole lot of things, but feeling ready and comfortable to do that as well.
So as a new person arriving to counselling, how would you know, what would you say to someone, how would you know how long it's going to take? Is it kind of you've got to fathom it, work it out as you go along as the counsellor, or do you, I mean, how long is this process potentially?
I think it very much depends on the client for me, but I've spoken a bit, so I'll let Kirsty answer.
No, you're fine. You carry on.
I think it just depends on the client, yeah, and you know, firstly, if they're comfortable, that's wonderful, that's great, you know, and you build up some trust and rapport. And sometimes it's a couple of sessions, and they're looking for somebody to almost validate that their feelings are okay. And once an outsider has validated their feelings, then they're often running and comfortable with themselves. Sometimes it's a little bit more deep, it's a little bit more complex, and takes a bit longer, you know. But it's very much in the hands of the client, I think. And as long as the client is feeling that each session is beneficial, you know, it might be that they've only taken one step forward on their journey, but it's still a step forward, you know. And as long as the sessions are beneficial and the client is comfortable, then, you know, it could be anything from 2 sessions to, as Lorna has mentioned there, over 2 years, you know. It just depends.
Yeah, and it really does. I mean, the thing that you can always say with a client as well is that we'll do review points as we go through. So we'll see how you feel you're doing. You know, is there any things that are there any things that you maybe want to go back to and things? So, you know, the client's always in the driving seat, and I think that's something that you always make sure that you tell your client, that you're in charge of the conversation, you're in charge of what you bring into the session. This is because it's not about what I think's important, it's about what you think's important and what you want to bring forward. One of the things, though, I think's really interesting as well is preparation. And I think what I've seen with some students is that doing the training has then brought things up that, you know, oh, I thought I'd put that to bed, or I didn't know that was going to be an issue, and all of a sudden they're coming, you know, they're presenting sort of saying, I'm feeling a bit uncertain on this, or I'm feeling a bit upset by this or something. And I think that is something that during training you have to be aware of as well, is that, you know, you don't know what it could bring up and evoke in you as a student as well. But also us tutors, we've done, you know, we have to make sure that we're tip top to be able to deal with the training that we do, the people that are in there, but also our own emotions. So we have to make sure that we're grounded and that we're okay to teach what we, especially if it's a subject that's close to our hearts as well, for good, bad or indifferent. But I think one of the things that we can't underestimate is when the students are going through this journey, I hate using the J word, but it's appropriate right now. When they're going through the journey, it may uncover things that they didn't even know were going to be an issue. So they may think that they're absolutely tickety-boo, and then something will come up. But then for them to turn around and say, do you know what, I think I may need to do a bit of work on this. And just to, you know, just to highlight the fact that that's okay, because we're not sitting here as oracles, even as qualified therapists and things like that. We don't have all the answers. It's very subjective. And if we can't encourage them to go and do what they're going to do as a profession, so go and have some therapy or something like that, or somebody may feel, oh, I feel a bit silly having to go for therapy. Why? You're training to be a therapist, you know. And it also gives us an empathetic understanding of sitting in the client's chair and how that feels.
That's so good to hear, because you want to talk to a relatable human being.
Totally.
Not an authoritative figure or someone that knows it all or hasn't gone through anything. No one wants that, do they? they want to feel like I
Mm.
can relate to your experiences, but obviously I don't know how you can do, I don't know if you can do that within, you know, a therapy session, if you can be relatable, can you, in terms of the conversation?
Yeah, and I think it's an important part of building the therapeutic alliance to be able to build that connection. Because if you, I mean, Phil, I mean, you'll probably back me up on this, but if you don't have a good therapeutic alliance with the client and you don't feel that connection both ways, you might as well refer on, because they're not going to feel confident working with you, and it's going to feel awkward. And then, I mean, I'm fortunate, I've not had that happen very often, except one guy that flopped down on my therapy chair and said, right, fix me. And I'm like, did you remember what I said on the phone about collaborative working environment? And well, yeah, but you're the one with all the answers. So, and do you remember I told you that I will never tell you what to do or give advice? And, you know, so some people still come with that viewpoint that you're going to be able to fix everything. But I think it's our job as therapists to say, no, this is us working together because you have the answers. So that will help people sort of go, oh, okay, I'm not going to be just talked at. And, you know, and I think that's one of the things that I found in my time doing therapy, that just actually having somebody listen properly and really hear what I was saying. And I, as I said before, I didn't even think I needed it. That wasn't why I went. But
that's so true, isn't it, Kirsty? That's so true. And I just want to come back to your point there about, you know, how the training can trigger events or feelings for us that we thought, you know, that weren't a problem, or we'd never really realized it before, or something that we thought we dealt with. And as you say, you know, that's not just students, that's tutors as well. You know, I can, if I kind of look forward, I can very much see myself, you know, returning to therapy at some point as a client. Because I don't feel that it's something that, you know, that you do once in life and then, you know, it's not a sticking plaster. It's something for me that, you know, I mean, as you're saying, Julia, you know, we you know, self-development, you know, it's like if we go through stages of this and we need different experiences to just link into how we're feeling about something at the moment. So I'm rereading for the first time in, well, I don't know, 20 years, maybe more, you know, R.D. Laing's The Divided Self, which is, you know, one of those classic books that's, you know, written in the 1960s, specifically here about schizophrenia. And, you know, I'm reading that book and I'm thinking, you know, have I got a full self that I've developed? You know, what was my family's fantasy that was created here? And, you know, just and all of the material that you learn on the course, just, you know, for me has always kind of triggered a thought process of, that's a really interesting, you know, that's a really interesting exploration here. And you know, so, you know, which again, Julia, kind of links into, I think, what you're saying, that actually, you know, that exploration can be done in many different ways, and counselling isn't always the answer. And I think that lots of us on the course get enormous benefit from just reflecting on and thinking through and talking about and taking those moments to, you know, to read something and think, actually, I kind of feel that applies to me a bit. And how does it do that? And what's that bringing up for me?
Yeah. And aren't we all learning forever about ourselves? You never get there, surely, ever. So, I mean, there's anyone, no matter how much studying you've done, training you've got, level you've got, age you're at, you're always learning. So if that's the case, then we're always going to all benefit.
I think the problem is when you don't carry on learning. That's when you realize, because obviously all life experience is experience. So our reactions, actions, all that sort of stuff are going to be slightly different based on what the new experiences are going to be. And that's why some people who have therapy, they almost like take it out for a spin after a piece of work. And then they might come back and say, do you know what, that works really well. I've really got that now, but it's brought something else up. So can I come back and do some work? So it's a bit like what you were saying, Julia, about the development and everything. You know, therapy can be used as part of that self-development. And I think it's important that, you know, we really start to genuinely take the stigma out of things, because why would you not want to morph? Why would you not want to learn more about yourself to improve your life? You know, for me, that's logical, but I still find it staggering that there's still some people that find it icky, or no, we don't do that, you know, but I find it fascinating.
But it's also like, I kind of think from an outsider's point of view, obviously not being entirely in your world, that you wait for, it's a shock that happens, or an event that happens, or there's a curveball, which happens to everyone. There's a death, there's grief, there's PTSD, all the things that can happen in life. You could be ticking along nicely and poof. And a lot of people in life generally don't act until something has created, or they've reacted to something, that event that's happened, as opposed to a broader picture, which is like, well, you know, what we're talking about, like you say, self-development and things like that. And then there's counselling for trauma, and there's things that happen through life. And a lot of people, a lot of friends that I've had, haven't done anything about themselves until they've been kicked into action. And I think that's a shame, because it doesn't have to get that big before you've got the tools in place because the tools in place before that happening, it's quite useful, isn't it, for dealing with the event when it happens, which inevitably something will. You know,
it's that reaction. You're right, Julia. People will react and then go to therapy, when really, if it's a weekly or a fortnightly or a monthly or a quarterly talk with a therapist, just to, you know, keep you balanced, keep you focused, maybe set some goals, agree some things, you know, whatever it might be. Having that, almost that proactive perspective on therapy would be a lot more beneficial, you know, instead of that reactionary sort of view. And Kirsty, you said the stigma word, you know, it's still very much, there's a big stigma around it as well. You know, I totally agree with that. You know, but to be more proactive, if you like, and sort of say, well, you know, I'm gonna speak to my therapist every month. I'll schedule it on payday, so I've got the money there, and I'm gonna check in every month. I think that would be a really, really good approach for somebody, you know. Much like we do with our own supervisors, for example, you know, we have that check-in with our supervisors in the therapeutic profession and stuff, you know, and that's really beneficial as well. So, you know, that would, being more proactive would be a much better stance for people, I think.
And also, it becomes a maintenance thing then as well, doesn't it? And so, and again, so, you know, going back to one of our earlier points of, well, it's, you know, it's bringing the focus back to us. And as you said, Phil, you know, we can put together a long to-do list, and nowhere on that list is take care of me. So, you know, and to actually just be able to turn the focus around and think, okay, well, yeah, you know, and as you said, Kirsty, it's like somebody asks us, you know, how are you?
Yeah.
And sorry, I've got another, that interestingly, like the stigma around the stigma, like the cost of counselling, if you can look at it that way, for example, if you think of a night, oh, I'm having a bad day, I'm going to go out for a night out. That can cost you up to 100 quid on a night. You know, there's definitely, you can prioritise your money based upon what's going to serve you the best. And it doesn't have to be like you pay for a massage because you're aching. It's things that are going to work literally, and it's not something, I think that people think it's something that can only be given or provided when there's been something really bad that's happened. I don't think they see it as accessible necessarily.
I think that people also don't think about the maintenance side until they've come and done a body of work. Until they've done quite a parody of work that's, you know, because of whatever kicked the reason for, as you said, Julie, you know, sometimes it does take something big for somebody to come and do some therapy. But then, I mean, I've certainly got clients that come and see me monthly for that, exactly what you were saying, Phil, because they know that once a month they can come in and they've got time for them. And even if it's just them having a rant they've got somebody, as long as it's still therapeutically viable, obviously, because it is therapy and not just, not just your mate listening. But they know that they've got somebody who will actively listen to them and engage with them, and that the fact that they can download with no judgment. And I think that's one of the biggest things with therapy, that it's non-judgmental. So, they can sit there and rant and then sort of take a breath and then look at me, and I'll go, okay, so what do we want to do with that? Again, you're asking them, because it's about them,
Yeah.
And I'm all for the maintenance, because a lot of the time, is that okay? Is that all right? Because, and I'm like, as long as it's therapeutically beneficial, then absolutely it's fine. And I've got somebody who's in a very, very high powered job that literally comes for that hour once a month, who needs that time, because by his own admission, he doesn't have time to think in between. So he needs that download time, so he can just go, right, okay, and then off he goes again and does what he needs to do.
It's interesting, Kirsty, that you bring up the non-judgmental aspect, because that is a really, really important aspect of therapy. We know it's one of the core conditions, and very, very important. Just bringing things back for a moment to personal therapy while training. There's some research that was published in 2018 from Murphy and some colleagues, and that looked at people's experiences while they were training, and if they had to do mandatory therapy. And one of the negatives they found about mandatory therapy when training was actually to do with being judgmental. So either that the student themselves found that actually, well, not necessarily that they felt judged by the therapist, but they've kind of felt judged by, they were judging themselves of, okay, well, I'm not as good as this professional therapist. I don't have the same amount of skills as this professional therapist. Or alternatively, so they were finding it the other way around, that they were actually judging the therapist themselves. So they were trying to apply what they had found should be happening in therapy, and deciding that, well, this doesn't seem to be what is happening in therapy from my professional therapist. So, that's kind of interesting, that actually, if we're doing mandatory therapy while training, there may be too much, very often, of an aspect of trying to determine what therapy should be because we're in training, rather than just being able to go with it and say, well, I'm here because of me. So again, it's, it sort of perhaps takes the focus away from us. It's like, I'm here because of me. It's like, no, I'm here because I want to find out what therapy is like, so I know that I'm doing it right. It's a very different reason for being there.
Yeah.
And I think unless you do have that engagement that they want to be there, it's pulling teeth, isn't it? And it's almost as well not fair. I wouldn't feel comfortable sat with somebody who is only here because an organisation said you have to be here in order to do what you want to do for a career.
Yeah.
Okay, where's my personal choice in this? We're saying to people when they're in therapy, the choice is yours. You can, you've come here because you want to maybe exact change. So why would we saying something different by that sort of action to a student, saying you must do this? And I'm all for personal responsibility, and if you want it, if you want to do it, fantastic, fill your boots, to use a military term, sorry, but equally, if you don't feel you want to, that's okay as well,
Yeah.
But I think there's got to be that element of understanding of personal responsibility, and also just, the affability to be able to make that choice and think, I think it might be a good idea, because there is a lot. I mean, Phil, when we were learning, I remember, I was a lot of people, full-time job as well as training and all this sort of stuff. And, sometimes my head was like, just with information. I'm like, oh my God, how am I ever going to do this? How am I ever going to get all this right? How am I ever, how? So if I'm thinking my organization is saying you have to do this as well,
Yeah.
it might have actually put me off a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. I probably would have struggled with that between study groups, work itself, the reading, the practice hours, etc., etc., etc.
Yeah.
Just to get the qualification, to then add in, you also have to do this.
Yes.
I don't know for definite, but I certainly would have probably felt a little bit more reluctant and possibly a little bit resentful that you're saying I have to have that as well. So yeah, I think it's got to be a personal choice. You know, as I say, I totally agree. The person has to want to come into that practice, into that room and sit and you know, work on whatever they want to work with, because otherwise it could just become, well, it's just not beneficial, is it really? It wouldn't be beneficial at all. So
how out of interest do you measure growth and progress? So for yourselves, if you're having self-therapy yourselves, obviously throughout training or whatever, or to the individual client, how are you measuring their growth and their progress? How is that?
There's this really good phrase that we have in training is it's all subjective. Right. Because how you measure growth, what people consider as growth, what people actually think of as natural, but actually because of yada, 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 it's all very much to do with the personal projection of what they see as growth. So we can measure, we have tools and measurements and things like that for things like, you know, the GAD-7 and things like that. So, you know, we can measure how somebody's feeling at the start of therapy, maybe in the middle and then at the end, with scoring systems that hopefully, you know, after you've worked with them will come down and improve. So that sort of measurement you can, but it can also be somebody saying, do you know what, that scenario happened and I reacted differently. And you're like, fantastic. How did that feel? How did that actually feel, either projecting that, working with that, whatever. That can be a measurement for a client. So it's all very, very subjective how you measure their progress.
Intangible.
Because it's about how they measure the progress.
Got it.
So.
Yeah, so I'm just aware of the time, and you know, actually we're going to have to stop fairly soon. I think that we could go on quite a long time with this, and you know, it's a subject close to our hearts and so on. So you know, any final words? We've got a couple of minutes, I'd say. Any final words?
Only if you feel you want to do it, do it. You know, development and understanding of self can help you when you're sat in the therapy chair, because I think the more awareness you have about yourself and your boundaries and knowing that your boundaries are okay as well, I think that can only benefit you as a, you know, both as a trainee therapist moving forward, but also then, you know, when you go out and do your own practice or whatever. So,
yeah.
And I think from my perspective, it's been fascinating, by the way. From my perspective, it's like, I'd love to have the tools to be able to deal better with situations, not to get crisis point and hit like, and have these big reactions to things. It would be nice to be able to have someone help me in coping better on a long-term level, you know, apply that throughout my life. That would be brilliant.
Yeah, I think that's, you know, that's very true. It's all about learning and maintenance, and as I was saying earlier, you know, if people were a little bit more proactive about therapy and you know, enable them and learn about themselves and allow them to develop their tools and their toolkit around things, that would be a really wonderful turn for things to take. So and the learning journeys that people go on with Chrysalis, fantastic. You know, I can't speak highly enough, and really looking forward to the classroom environment and sharing these skills and knowledge with people when I start teaching next year.
And you're proof that counsellors are lush. because you're all lovely people. Yeah. Approachable, easy to talk to, lovely people. There we
you
go.
go.
But I think the main message, you never stop learning, and you should never stop learning. And that's with, you know, personal therapy, CPD, whatever you want to use. And, you know, you'll just continue to, you know, to expand and understand things. And I think that's one of the main things that I really love about what I do, is that the tools that I've got have given me the benefit to be able to carry on learning. And for me, that's everything. And, you know, because I think that's one of the biggest gifts we can give a client, is the knowledge to be able to self-help, self-soothe and all that sort of stuff. So
yeah, absolutely, Kirsty. And I think that, you know, from a Chrysalis perspective, you know, our conversation has, you know, cemented for me really that, you know, we've got it right. We've got it right with Chrysalis. You know, we know that we fly the flag for personal therapy. Of course we do. You know, it's what we're training in, it's what we believe in, it's what we know, and we have personal experience that it works. At the same time, you know, we don't say to our students, you must do this as part of the course. It's like, okay, it's a choice. Come to it at the right time for you. You know, if and when you do, no doubt you will find it beneficial and valuable for you. You know, and it will become part of your toolkit that you can continue to use throughout your life. So, okay, so, well, thanks so much, everybody. Thanks so much, everybody who's been listening. I hope that you found it really enjoyable and inspiring. And I hope maybe it's, you know, it's given you some things to think about as well. So if you've enjoyed our episode, enjoying our channel, then do remember to subscribe to our channel. We'd love to see you again. You know, we'll be back with another episode of Chrysalis on the Couch really soon. So thanks so much to everybody, and bye-bye for now.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye now.